in one video, there was that she was in cages and all she had were these stuffed dolls. And in the other, that she was just surrounded by like clothes or whatever, and she would go by herself. So it seemed like lonely and trying to make friends, but really she got nobody.
Right. How many of you were in the group that I oriented here, and I told you about the single baby?
I see the baby in there.
Yeah. So what that's about is at one point the Chinese government only allowed families to have one kid, and that was because of the population is so big in China. They wanted to kind of shrink it down a little bit. So that film represents, and you hit it right on, you got it right on, is what would happen if that continued. I mean, just imagine if you guys didn't have all the stuff you have. You didn't have your headphones, you didn't have your hat, well, maybe you did have. You didn't have Mountain Dew, you didn't have a purse. All you had was, you were just out and about. And that's what that film represented. So it was kind of Song's take, who was the husband, and Yin's take, and that was actually their daughter in the film.
I knew it.
So, yeah. So that's basically what that film represented. So that was very good. Very good. Very good. So I'm going to turn it over now to Sarah. And if you have other questions, I think a couple questions you want to throw out to these guys?
Yeah.
In regard to...
Where's Emily? Where's Miss Shear? There's Miss Shear. Do you have any guidance about what kind of questions we should try to answer?
Higher order thinking.
Yeah. What he said.
All right. So, did you guys notice any patterns as you were going through it? If so, what were they? Justin, what do you got for me?
Yeah. One of the, a few of the sets, one of them would always have like some kind of artwork photo or be made out of like a fabric or just be made out of like a ton of fabrics. And the large golden chopstick with all the places like stitched into it kind of to me correlated to the big patchwork suitcase, which on the inside, if you looked in, you saw like a map. So one of them was more of a take on like experiences, like traveling. The other one seemed to be more of just very clear to the point of what they see.
So let me ask you this. Where are all your clothes made?
China.
So when you look at all of those pieces, everything is made, like a lot of them are China, some Philippines, Vietnam, but the Chinese factories are making most of the sneakers, most of the t-shirts, most of these things that we buy super cheap because we can't make them as cheap in this country. And the labor conditions are for the most part really bad. And that's really, and they're mostly women who are working in those factories. So Yin, the woman, the artist who made all the pieces you were talking about that have the fabric and t-shirts, that's a big part of what her work is all about. She's looking at sewing and all of these kinds of really ancient, actually, crafts and how they exist today in Chinese society and Chinese factories and what it means to be a working woman in China.
And she also, for the three chopsticks piece, hers was the large silver tube.
Right.
Like for the, because I know China has like huge pollution.
Smog, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot of like humor in it, but there's a dark side to a lot of it as well. So there's light and dark in a lot of the pieces. That's a really good observation.
Any other patterns, things that you saw coming more than once? What you got? Is that alloy up there?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there saw some like silk type fabrics going on.
Oh, which are the pieces that I made from silk?
Can you give us an example?
Yeah.
Oh, like a suitcase? Kind of like a silky type material going on with the suitcase pieces. Do I have that right?
Oh, it's like satin.
Yeah.
It's a shiny, it's like satin, shiny, like prom dress fabric. And basically all of those are used. They've all been worn by people, and she asked friends to basically be like, if you ask everybody sitting here, like, give me your old t-shirt, give me your old prom dress, and I'm going to make a big project out of it, that's what you end up with. Like, it's all clothing that's been worn, and from all over the world, too. It's Europe, people she meets, because they travel all over the world.
Sneeze or were you calling my name?
I sneeze like that.
Okay.
Where they're calling for you.
Any other observations, something that you've noticed? We can move away from patterns. What you got, Brandon?
I noticed in the first floor, like most of the pieces they were split differently, but it showed like one correlation. It showed one picture itself. Like when I read on the wall that the refrigerator itself, like it's two different sections. You have the freezer part, and then you have the regular food area, and it showed like the women's point of view.
Mm-hmm.
So it showed the women's point of view and the male's point of view, but the women choose like a leggings.
Pantyhose. Yep. Yeah.
And then it has like the concrete on the top of it.
Yep.
The concrete dust. And even though the male's part look more demanding and strong,
Mm-hmm.
but the female uses the concrete on the top to show that it can also be demanding and forward.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, they divided them all up 50-50, and each one customized each half. So the side that Yin Xiu-Jen customized, as you said, it all has stockings. It's all that entire one, and then it has cement powder on the top, which is meant to tell you that it's part of something that's decaying. It's a way of life in Beijing, a neighborhood in Beijing that's being gentrified. Buildings are being knocked down and raised so that new skyscrapers can be built. And this way of life is really disappearing. And the other side, Songdong's side, that has the windows, there's a gender thing in China where, correct me if I'm wrong about this, but it's inside person and outside person. Like I think it's husband and wife. And husband means outside person, wife means inside person, literally. Like if you translated it, the word literally into English. And that means just kind of what it sounds like. Men are, in the outside world and women are meant to stay at home. So those pieces are kind of commenting on that, the idea that windows represent your view to the outside world, and that's the husband's world, and then the inside world is the wife. And of course, in their case, that's actually not true because they're both famous artists and they travel all over the place, but that's the roots of their society are very much based on that. Yeah.
It also applies to like other cultures too.
Right.
It's exactly the same thing. So that can relate to different topics and culture at the same time.
Right, because there's kind of a gender thing that doesn't have anything really almost to do with China, right? Like that, it actually could be applied to almost any culture probably on Earth. So is that that's another good question. Are there things that are about it that are maybe familiar to the life in the U.S., life in New York City, life in Philly?
Possibly. Let's have that be kind of our last question. Did anything here, other than Siddiqui's laughing, did anything that you saw here remind you of a piece, something that you have seen in your own life, like a connection to your own life? What you got, Brandon?
I don't know what it was. I showed Mr. Irons. This long pieces of cameras, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fake, yeah.
Yeah, it was like a long camera, and I seen that's how I view things differently. You can put a bunch of pieces together, but it might make one big picture at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was pretty.
This one's mine. I did not take this.
That's real?